two very important things on this last day, my last panel here at ICC this year. And that is that I suffer from Warwick Davis abuse. Did anybody see the panel I did with Warwick Davis yesterday? And what that guy, who's just a little taller than my femur, how he kicked my butt on stage, on my stage at my show. Did you guys see that?
Yeah.
It was horrible. But I also want to say at the very last panel, I want to thank you guys all for coming here. This is, the show is all about you guys. We all hate each other back here, but we all love you. You guys are great. And we're so glad you came here. And so let's start that last panel. So ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the green one himself, Paul Blake. Can you do that again?
I'll come on again.
Ladies and gentlemen, Bib Fortuna himself, Michael Carter!
Excellent.
That's good.
But carry on.
We were talking about Bib Fortuna back there.
Incidentally, the abuse you got from Warwick was all because I saw him yesterday. He was on that Segway, that little. You've seen him going around in that little Segway thing. Well, I did see him, and I noticed that his testicles were just resting on those two little bars.
Where were you? I needed you yesterday.
That's why he gave you so much stick. So I apologise on his behalf. It was a nasty thing.
Well, we got, apparently that might just... And we got one other actor back here, one of my best friends in all of the Star Wars world, the Sandtrooper, the Fixer, Mr. Anthony Forrest.
Good to see you.
It's good to see you too. When did we last see each other? Ubeda,
Spain.
Spain. We were in Spain.
Yeah.
We were in Spain.
We were dining, we were high dining because we had great food.
We did.
Yeah, we were up in the mountains, it was 40 degrees.
It was. It was a beautiful place too, wasn't it? Yeah, amazing.
Yeah.
I remember we did we did a signing in the town square, which was medieval, filled with American tourists who couldn't believe we were actually in a Spanish setting doing a Star Wars signing, and it was pretty cool.
Yeah, it's actually, it's the Ubeda Film Festival.
Yeah.
And it's not so much a convention, it's a film festival, and so what they do is they get people in who've been in films and that to participate in the film festival. Little special. Yeah, beautiful location. Yeah, up on the hill, you look out and you see thousands and thousands of olive trees.
Yeah, pretty impressive.
Yeah.
But that balcony that we were, do you remember we went out on a balcony and it was like Mussolini waving to...
That was his invitation, not mine. I don't if I had to take it from Warwick Davis, I'm going to have to take it from Kenny.
Yeah.
But I remember Jeremy and Maureen, Bullet, obviously Boba Fett, he would, him and his wife just loved that. Just twice a month, they'd go. They're in Spain, they're in the Philippines, they're everywhere. It must be kind of cool to be able to travel. Do you have a favorite place?
Sorry?
Do you have a favorite place that you traveled on the convention circuit? Other than my house during that hurricane in Stanford?
Yeah, that was true. That was interesting. That was interesting.
So I took it to a convention local to me and we had a hurricane, like in Connecticut, which doesn't happen at all.
Yeah. So we ended up spending the convention in the kitchen.
Yes, it was kitchen con.
Yeah, drinking.
400 people showed up.
Talking of Maureen and Jeremy, they were the original beckons of the convention circuit, Maureen and Jeremy.
That's very true.
And we're very much a sort of star couple, and Maureen being very much in charge of most of Jeremy's activities, yes. But they certainly did go everywhere. Particularly to places like South America, I think they went to as well.
They went everywhere.
Yeah,
they went
did.
everywhere.
Bolivia? I think Jeremy told me we went to Bolivia. That was that was.
I bet you he's been to over 100 countries.
Yeah.
Must have done.
Him and Maureen.
Yeah.
Well, I did Moscow.
Moscow.
Recently, about 4 or 5 years ago, and they, most of the fans everywhere are really charming, kind, and they
Not as good as these ones.
not as good as
Nashville
these
is
ones.
the
Absolutely,
best.
that goes without
These are the best. Actually, Nashville it's
Yeah,
it's
Nashville
got a very special
hospitality.
vibe.
Yeah, very
It's
special
yeah.
indeed.
The barbecue.
Barbecue.
Edley's? Whoa, I strongly recommend that place. I went twice.
Yeah, it's interesting because even the toothpaste is chili flavored.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's talk about Star Wars.
Is that a movie? It
So,
is.
so both of you
Never
were
heard of
in-
it. Never heard of it.
We're in my opinion, the best Star Wars movie. I love all the Star Wars movies. Well,
Yeah.
the real ones. But my favorite one of all time is A New Hope. And both of you guys were in it. So when you guys became part of Star Wars, you never heard of it. What is this thing? So,
No.
Greedo? Mr. Rodian? Paul, what was your experience by starting and finding out about Star Wars, getting the job, etc.?
Well, I mean, it was so long ago, 1976. I mean, I was a child. But we had no idea. We thought we were all in Attack of the Killer Tomatoes to begin with, because at that point in the UK, most sci-fi movies were B movies, so we had no anticipation of it being successful. In fact, we couldn't wait to leave most of the time. I mean, I got the job through Anthony Daniels, because we'd been working together in a kids program for the BBC, and he rang me up afterwards and said, I'm doing this sci-fi movie, and the director's desperate for other actors, and so I rang you because you're cheap. So I said, absolutely, I'll be there. In fact, my wife's in the audience. He asked her to be in the movie too. He said, Kate, were you interested in this sci-fi film? And she'd been a dancer prior to this request. And she'd only just finished with dancing professionally, because she had a pretty bad injury. And she decided to be an actress, so she didn't really want to do a dancing part, and that's what I think was anticipated she was going to do. So she actually turned it down, which I have never let her forget to this day. Otherwise, she'd be up here talking now.
So are you upset that you turned it down?
Yeah.
You would have been great.
What would you have played, Kate, did you think?
Well,
Greedo.
I think
Greedo. Yeah.
No, I don't know. Apparently there was a dancing bit with Jabba the Hutt.
It was probably Ula. I think it would be, because she would be the dancing character in there.
Yeah.
And and Femi was great.
Yeah.
But with your credentials in the ballerina world, I mean, that would have been a fantastic thing. But, well, no one wants your autograph now. Sorry. But anyway, so Anthony, how'd you get involved in Star Wars way back in 1976?
I was sleeping on the street in Soho,
That is not surprising.
and George happened to be passing by and felt bad for me. So, yeah, it was one of those classic casting situations. Pretty much the same way Garrick was in that, where my agent said they'd like to see you down at 20th Century Fox on Soho Square. And so you go in the building and you go up to whatever floor, I can't remember what it was, and there's this empty room with this little man sitting there, and there's nothing on the walls. It's just all white walls and just a blank table. And so you walk in, and then, lo and behold, there's George Lucas. And it's a conversation, and we talk about life. There's a little bit of talk about life, because I asked him, how do you like directing? And he said he didn't, he liked writing. Is that true? He actually said that. And he showed me the screenplay, and so I was taking a look at it, and so he said, let me get back to you. And about 2 weeks later, my agent phoned up and said, George would like you to play the fixer. So contracts are signed and everything like that. You get on a airplane, you head out, and I didn't know I knew I was heading out to Tunisia and that. But I'd never been to the Middle East or Tunisia or anything like that before, and so I get there, and obviously I'm a film buff as well, and I'm watching movies, and I go, it's Lawrence of Arabia. We're doing Lawrence of Arabia. I'm thinking, that's because that's the one film that had already been there and done it, and also because Alec Guinness, Obi-Wan, is in Lawrence of Arabia.
Right.
Yeah.
Did they film Lawrence of Arabia in Tunisia?
No, they filmed it in Spain and
Morocco, right?
Yeah, I think it was. Yeah, a lot was filmed in Spain.
Steven Spielberg's favorite movie.
Yeah,
Lawrence of Arabia.
yeah. It's an immense film, and actually, it's interesting if you see Lawrence of Arabia, because the story behind that's taking place has a lot of resonance of what goes on today in the Middle East. There's a lot of history in the story in that, and it's such a spectacular film. there's a very good reason why it won so
Yeah,
many
yeah,
awards.
it's not about Star Wars, like my Star Wars.
What did, hang on. What did Guinness play in Lawrence of Arabia? He was a
King
a
Did he play King Faisal?
He got in a lot of trouble over that.
Well, not then, probably more now. They didn't care then, did they?
Even then, it was kind of, you know, it was a little.
Yeah, but back then they had what's his name, Laurence Olivier.
Yeah.
In blackface.
Well,
playing with
yeah,
Bella.
absolutely.
You go to prison for that.
Yeah, I'll be inside. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
But I didn't know we had problems with that even back then.
Certainly not as much as it would be today, but it was kind of frowned upon. Yeah.
Yeah.
Although it was a great performance.
Yeah.
It was fantastic.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we're there, and then we're in, I'm in my mind, I'm not in Star Wars, I'm in Lawrence of Arabia. I had a couple of days off, and so I'm at the hotel. And all of a sudden, Robert Watts, who, bless him, sadly passed away recently, Robert came and picked me up at the hotel, and he said, George wants to see you on the set. And so I'm going, oh, I'm being fired already, I haven't done anything yet. And we drive out to location, and they're already they're in Tatooine, and George is coming to the car with a script in his hand, and I get out of the car, and he takes me to one side, and he says, I need your help. I need you to, would you do this, play this trooper? You're going to be in armor, and everything, it's not going to affect the fixer character or anything like that. So I take a quick look at it, and I look at him, and he's stressed. I could see he's stressed, and I go, okay, let's do it. And that was it, and then all of a sudden I walk around the corner, and there's Obi-Wan, and I meet Alec Guinness. And while I'm walking, trying to learn the scene, and trying to kind of get an understanding of what the scene is going to be like, they're dressing me. So there's not a lot of mirrors in the desert. I have no idea what I look like, if I look good or look bad or anything like that. They're sticking tape on the back of my legs, trying to keep it together. And then eventually we settle in to where they'd already been set up, the cameras were already set up and everything like that, and they were ready to go. So I don't know what caused the emergency, but I think I had a feeling that Alec Guinness wanted an actor to actually play the scene with him. Often when you have situations where the script girl will actually read the lines. But I think he understood how important that moment was for his character, in the sense that this is really the first time that you have a sense of the power of the Force. You have a sense of using the Force. And so I think he wanted to make that special, and lo and behold, he made it special. You know, he made it work, and that's, I think it's on his behalf that the scene is really such iconic in the terms of Star Wars in the moment it has, and with the fans as well.
Right, and that character, the dirt that's on his chest, it's a special mark. That's actually George Lucas used. You were saying.
Well,
those want to be dirtier.
Yeah, no. What it was is there was a as they were dressing me. George is about detail. He's very much about being detailed, and so they're dressing me, and that's not necessarily George's handprint on my chest. No, it's
That's a better story that way.
I know it is. Yeah. But everybody would be looking at his fingerprints and everything like that. No, it's really. So he's looking at me, and he thought I wasn't dirty enough. I wasn't a dirty enough Sandtrooper. So he gets down on the ground, and he starts throwing dirt all over me. He did himself. He didn't wait for the props guys, because this is a moment where there's a lot of pressure happening, because this scene is now running behind. You have a certain amount of daylight, you have a certain amount of time, and on the script you have a certain amount that you have to get covered every day. X number of pages have to be filmed, otherwise you're falling behind on your schedule, and this is costing thousands and thousands of dollars every day. So that leans on a director's mind all the time. Fortunately for George Lucas and Gary Kurtz, who was the producer, they did not have Hollywood anywhere near them. They were
interesting.
They didn't have that stress of executives showing up in their suits and sitting there in their cars, just kind of, and them having to see that and worry about that. They didn't have that. They had that freedom, but they have other stresses to deal with.
Yeah, I think when I first met him, he's very much as you're sort of describing. He was very much an alternative to what existed certainly in Europe and the UK at the time, which was the bully director who would just go, come on, get over there. You're not there on time, get fired. And it literally was as bad as that, and they could be real bullies in certain movies. Prior to that generation of directors, Spielberg and George, it was a breath of fresh air. When I first met George for the interview or whatever, I had no idea what I was going to, but I turned up at Elstree Studios really early in the morning to see George, and I was starving because I hadn't had any breakfast, and I came on a pretty long train ride from London. Got to Elstree Studios, went through, and there was nobody around because it was very early in the morning. Apart from, I walked out onto the sound stage with masses of sand, nothing in it, but lots of arc lighting, and just a little mock-up in the corner of the Millennium Falcon, which I didn't know was the Millennium Falcon. So I walked over, and there's nobody in the room apart from one guy in the corner, so I walked over to him and said, hi. I'm Paul Giulio. You couldn't give me a cup of coffee because I'm absolutely desperate. I haven't had any. So he goes off, brings this sort of hot cup of coffee back, and I'm sort of having a drink of this, and I say, do you know anything about this movie with this fucking huge thing? Excuse me. Because I've come out to see somebody called, oh God, George. He said, I'm George Lucas. So I asked George Lucas to get me a cup of coffee before he even, how to this day, I don't know why I got the job. And afterwards, actually, as far as direction, he was utterly charming, but no fool. And he, like many sensible people, and particularly directors, will get a team around them who will do everything right because they're the best. And he was very sensible in doing that, and he got great teams around him. So he would stand back a lot from scenes until the moment came when he'd make a decision or say, yeah, I like that, we'll do it that way. And me being a young actor at the time and wanting to get everything right like you and wanting to go into a bit of detail about the script and things, I said, George, this is an alien scene, it's kind of a cowboy scene, isn't it? How do you want me to play this alien? And he looked at me for about a minute. He said, play it like they do in the movies. Which was the best advice I ever got in my entire career.
Oh, that was great. So, speaking of movies, and this could be for the one of you. We'll start with you, Andy. What's your favorite movie? That's a question I always like to ask.
Oh, favorite movie.
I'll give you. You can also do an honorable mention because I know you're a movie aficionado, so you like a lot of them. But do you have
one of my? It's an Orson Welles film that not many people know about. It's called Chimes at Midnight.
Oh yeah.
It's the story of Falstaff, and Orson Welles plays Falstaff, and this is a point in his career where he was as large as Falstaff. And one of the beautiful parts of this story is the fact that it was filmed on 16 millimeter. It was a point in Orson Welles' career when Hollywood had completely turned its back on him, and he had gone and he was living in Paris, and he had money, but he didn't have the kind of money that you needed to make a feature film. And so what he did was he was going around and talking to investors and that, some German investors and whatever he could get at a dinner table, because he was a wonderful raconteur and definitely somebody that a lot of people wanted to be associated with. And his dream was to play and make the movie Falstaff. But he was telling his investors, we're making Treasure Island. Because none of them knew what Falstaff was or the story. It's like making a Shakespearean film. Investors can't see any money in it. They don't think it's going to make any money. So he was telling them that he was going to make Treasure Island. And so he eventually got the money, and he went away and he started making Falstaff. And he had a cast that was of impeccable actors. Sir John Gill was in the cast. I mean, if you actually get a chance to find Chimes at Midnight, it's the sound. The audio is a bit iffy, but it's just a classic example of what you would call garage filmmaking. It's really, you know, it's taking it, you know, to that level where you're desperate to make that movie and you'll do whatever it takes to make that movie.
Well, you're absolutely right. Orson Welles, interesting. One of the only actors who lived his career entirely backwards, starting off as possibly the greatest actor, director, writer, movie maker, going through a career which ended up with him being a sherry salesman, right? You probably don't remember, but he did a lot of sherry adverts in the last few years.
We will not make wine unless it's time, or something like that. I remember that when I was a kid.
Yeah. But it was a great film, James. I'm like you. I kind of, we're a bit snotty, us actors. We like kind of classical films and things like that. So I like European cinema, things like Les Enfants du Paradis, which was a French film that really made during the war, and is extraordinary. Jean-Louis Barrault or someone like that, who was the star. But I'm kind of, I think most of us are kind of eclectic in our, I'll watch anything. I mean, at the moment, my wife and I are heavily into Korean drama, which is fantastic. I'll watch any Korean movie at the moment, basically because their whole storytelling and mythology is way out there now. It's dare I say it, it's actually better than you guys in the States and we're doing in England at the moment, because it encompasses everything about life. It's not theme-led or issue-led, which I'm not a great fan of in drama. You can read that in a book or go to university and study that, and it's great. I like a drama and a literature that encompasses, so if you go to the North Pole or the South Pole, they'll know what you're talking about when you're talking about a certain story. So we are a little bit shitty about that, but that's my favorite.
All right, putting it back to Star Wars, what character in Star Wars is your favorite? Obviously, other than your own. I know Greedo is your favorite because
Of course.
he'll send you emails and he'll sign it the green one.
Yeah, no, that was only after a particularly bad plate of spaghetti, I think. I think it was green anyway. Yeah.
Do you have a favorite character other than Greedo?
I love the
Is
little.
Greedo your favorite? Obviously.
Yeah, I do love Greedo, but no, he wasn't my favourite. My favourite in Star Wars was those little droids on the floor that used to go running around the. Yeah, they were fantastic.
Wow,
I was absolutely obsessed by those. I mean, yeah, all the other characters are phenomenal, but and I particularly, I mean, it sounds a bit, you know, smarmy, but I love the character you play because it was so funny. I mean, it was just a great little scene, and now I understand it with your explanation about why Alec wanted that, and that's what made it terrific. But yeah, I love those little droids.
Mouse droids. Have anybody seen one this weekend?
There's a mouse droid.
Almost every convention there is one.
Yeah.
Do we have one in the room?
One here. It's in the room. It's in the next room.
Ah, right, yeah.
Do you want me to go get one?
No.
I'll get it for you.
No, it's fine. I don't like them that much.
Anthony, you got a favorite character in Star Wars? Is it the Sandtrooper? You can say so.
No, it's.
And then we'll just go for seconds.
It's funny because it's actually the droid that Kenny Baker played, but it's because I know it's Kenny. Because anybody who was around Kenny had a chance. I was always saying, I've said before, is Kenny and the other actor, Jack Purvis, who was in Tunisia with us, they had a comedy act called the Mini Tones. And my experience, part of the time, the best part for me of being in Tunisia was being with these guys and having them entertain me endlessly with their double acts. Because together they were just this magical pair that just had fantastic timing, and they were just jokers all the time. And they were like, they had this amazing sense of humor because they used to work the working man, some of the hardest clubs you can play comedy to, right? Which are, to the coal miners and to people like that. They worked that for years and years, and so they had it really right down. So when I always think of Kenny, I think of R2D2, and knowing that it's Kenny making that happen. Right?
Yeah, I was privileged enough to watch Kenny in that scene in the cantina where they first come into the cantina. So Kenny comes in, and then Alex behind him, or I can't remember who else, but anyway, and they spent hours pulling Kenny down They had about six R2D2s, I think, altogether. And they were very primitive, not anywhere near as good as the ones you see these days going around conventions and things. But they used to lower Kenny down on a rope, and he'd be inside this thing, and all you could hear was, "What the fuck?" And they would fall over at the bottom, and they'd lift him up and drag him back up again, him complain. And they used to play tricks on him all the time, the crew. And inside his droid one day, they were very naughty. They put all these nude photographs, which was fantastic. And again, he was so funny. But yeah, I mean, he and Jack were very, very good. And they used to play harmonica too.
Yeah, it was just.
You could look it up, Mini Tones. Look it up on YouTube.
Yeah.
And there are old shows on there, and they did do Laurel and Hardy.
Yeah.
You know, Jack would be
Stan.
Stan.
Stan, yeah.
Which is the smaller one? Which is the smaller one? Stan.
I think that's Stan. It is Stan.
Yeah, so Stan would be with Jack Purvis, and then Kenny would be the other one. And they were great with the mustache and the hat and everything. It was fun.
Yeah, it was like having my own comedy club there with me.
You know what you can also look up on YouTube, in case you have some time at the airport or whatever today, is that the Sandtrooper scene that we're talking about. You and I did one on stage that was a live redoing of it a couple of years ago, where we got a couple guys from the audience, a kid in a yellow shirt to play C-3PO, and a guy dressed as Obi-Wan to play Obi-Wan. And we redid the scene. I had a script and everything. And everyone thought I was crazy for doing this. And I stole this idea from that bastard Ward Davis, who abused me last night. This morning, all the actors were like, "Dude, we feel so bad for you."
Kevin, let it go. Let it go.
But anyway, I stole that idea from him, of reacting during a panel, reacting scenes from Star Wars. That was his idea. And then I thanked him for it and took the idea, and he just, it was terrible. You guys should watch it. It was brutal. We did it last night. But we do have a couple of minutes, and Longwater wants to do some work. So if you guys have some questions.
This is the Paul Blake and Anthony Forrest show, by the way, not the Kevin Lyle show.
I bet, look, that now you think you can pick on me because the work is important.
I just wanted to make sure that the guests know who the important ones are, and that they know that we know who the important ones are.
And who's the important ones?
The guests.
These guys are the important ones.
But as far as you're concerned-
that was good.
That was good. Right next to you.
I have a question right here. We'll get right here. Please stand up. Thank you.
Do you guys own any Star Wars action figures?
Hundreds in my attic. Every 6 months, my wife makes me clear them all out.
I have a few that have been given to me by fans, but I was not really collecting. And actually, I guess my eldest son had some. He did have some, actually,
It's a good question, though, because the first time you ever think, as an actor, you see yourself immortalized in plastic somewhere. It's extraordinary, because most of the time, all you can hope for is somebody seeing you in a play or a film or a radio or whatever, and thinking you're okay, and that's pretty good. But suddenly seeing an image of someone you played or something you played was extraordinary. I mean, and I'm like Anthony. I mean, we're so lucky that they've followed us around for 45 years now. I mean, they bring
How many Greedos do you think were made?
God knows how many. I mean, one every year they bring out a different one.
Hold on a second. Hey, Jim, how many Greedos were made? Jim, the lead designer of Kenner's standing right over there. So, what the heck? Hey, Jim, how many Greedos do you think were made? Just make up a quick number.
The only one I know was 1979-ish,
Yeah.
but I have no idea. You would know better than me. You would know better than
I don't know nearly as good. Come on.
There was probably not another Greedo made until around 1995. That was probably the next Greedo in the action figure line.
Well, they bought all the tiny little ones out in their thousands, didn't they? Which were fantastic because everyone bought one. But what happened was that because they were great, everyone played with them and chewed their heads off. If you're my kids, they chewed their heads off.
We had them chewed off, yeah.
Went to hospital several times with Greedos down there somewhere. And I didn't quite put that correctly, I don't think. Anyway, meaning they swallowed the Greedo. I didn't put that correctly either. So I'll move on swiftly, Kevin. The action figures were fantastic.
Greedo is notorious for
Jim, for making
his antenna being bitten off by children. Stand up, please.
Thank you.
Paul, I got to meet you in Little Rock, Arkansas several years back, and you told us a story about a blaster. Could you share that story?
Oh, you mean the little gun that I had? Yeah, that was. They were the originals. We had the guns were all real guns. They were decommissioned Mausers, so they're pretty heavy. And the props department had put little bits of plastic on them to make them look like space guns, and so they're pretty cool. And in those days, in '76, we finished filming, and there was nothing on a movie set that you wanted. I mean, you couldn't give the stuff away. Now, I mean, oh, wow, you have to sign confidentiality, etc., and that you won't take anything off a set. Otherwise, you have the barrage of Disney or Lucasfilm lawyers on your back. But anyway, in those days, I could have taken the entire cantina home if I'd wanted to. But the gun was cool, so I took it home for my kids, who were quite young, to play with. And they played with them for a couple of years. And then one sort of month, they snapped the little bit of plastic on the front of the gun. So they said, "Oh, Dad, we just, we broke it." I said, "Oh, don't worry, it's only a toy gun." I threw it in the bin. I threw it in the bin. And I met a dealer about 2 years ago who he said, "Broken, I would have given you $750,000 for that gun," because the only other one in any scene that, other than the lightsabers, was Han Solo's gun. That's the only other one that was sort of incredibly valuable. So I threw my children's education into the bin.
It's true. You get that one here.
Coming right this way. Stand up, please.
Hi, Paul. I met you 5-6 years ago in New Jersey. Me and you spoke about this earlier. I just wanted to share the story with the crowd. There's a couple things. You spoke about the hands and the difficulty of that and what they were actually made of. And I'd like you to share the story of the high heels.
Yes, thank you for that. I don't know whether you're all aware, but in one of the books, there's a picture of Greedo, really with George, and George is adjusting some costume or other. But Greedo is actually wearing some kind of flesh-coloured high heels, just as this gentleman has here. So I get a lot of questions saying, "Paul, why are you wearing those high heels as Greedo?" And I said, "Well, that's Wednesdays and Saturdays. Everyone needs a hobby, It's not. It's a personal question. I'm entitled to, etc., etc." But the truth is, that's not me. That was the other Greedo, who was a lady called Maria de Aragon, who is unfortunately no longer with us. But Maria did all the retakes in the States a year after we finished doing all the cantina scene, because when George was left, after he cut all the sequences with the original Jabba the Hutt, who was an actor called Declan Mulholland, who was a really cool guy. I mean, he was very good, Declan, but we did a few scenes in front of the Millennium Falcon walking up and down, which covered why Han Solo was borrowing the Millennium Falcon from Jabba, and it explained all that in that sequence. But George, at the end of all that filming, which lasted about a week, he realised he didn't want Jabba to be. Declan was quite small, and Declan was brilliant, but George wasn't that happy, so he wanted it to be the now iconic image that you all know as Jabba the Hutt. So it was all cut, and he was only left with that, the now iconic scene where Greedo shoots first or not, depending on your opinion. So that's what Maria did about a year later, because we'd only got quite a lot of long shots, a lot of general shots, very few close-ups, and my mask didn't actually do anything. It was just solid. So when it came to close-ups, they had to do some more headshots in the States. And that is why Greedo is seen to be also wearing high heels. But I stick to my excuse. Wednesdays and Saturdays is perfectly okay.
So when we see other characters, they're not Greedo, but they're other Rhodians.
Yeah.
Is that you?
It is in the scene directly after I die. That's me as well. In fact, I said to George, "George, you realise I've died in the last another scene here, and there I am again in the next scene. He said, all Rhodians look the same.
I would have thought he would have just thrown a different jacket on.
I said that. I said, what? They wear the same clothes? Oh yeah, oh yeah. They very, you know.
Well, you know, there's a third one, right?
Yeah.
Walking back in the hallway, and they were down the street.
That's not me. That wasn't me. There were some extras in the cantina who were dressed exactly the same. I think there were 2 or 3 girls, I think. But no, most of it, when you see a Rhodian, is me. We're a very short, small species.
Not a single one wears underwear. No underwear.
Do we have some evidence there? There we go.
Hi, I just wanted to ask, how long did it take to record all your scenes in A New Hope for both of you?
I was, the Sandtrooper scene, that was done in an afternoon, or even less than an afternoon, because normally you have to, you know, they'll set up in the morning, they'll take ages to set up to get the lighting right and that, but it was probably about, I would think probably about 5 to 6, maybe 7 hours that I was there in the costume.
So one day for that scene?
One day for that scene.
And how long for Fixer?
Fixer, that was, I think 2 days in Tunisia and then another 3 days in London.
So you did both?
Yeah.
Separated by how much time?
About a week or 2 weeks.
Okay.
Yeah, when we got, because they had to do the rest of the Fixer sequences inside Tashi Station in the studio at Elstree. Yeah.
Wow.
Well, they were doing everything else as well.
Yeah, it was the same for us. I mean, it was pretty damn quick turnover. I mean, because as Anthony explained earlier on, the first movie was so pressured for George because of the money, of getting it in on time, and he'd also shot a huge amount. I mean, the script, I've got the original script, was the size of a telephone directory. So, you know, he had 8 hours worth of movie to edit.
Yeah, it's 142 pages.
Yeah.
Which is basically, in Hollywood terms, 22 pages overtime.
Yeah, it should be 120.
Yeah.
All right, do we have time for one more question, Dave? Make it a
Why
good
do we have time for a question? Who we got?
Someone has to take a plane.
We got a question right here.
Someone's got
Stand up, please.
a limo waiting outside. A dewback. Someone has a dewback waiting outside.
I do, yeah.
So with you all's favorite characters that weren't in droids, have you ever considered cosplaying or dressing up as a different Star Wars character, since that would be kind of hard to do?
I know you've dressed up as a Sandtrooper.
I did in
Germany.
Essen. In Germany. They made me, Irish prop masters made me a costume again, and they said, would you consider actually getting back into being a trooper again? And so I actually did it with the 501st.
And I remember one time I was in we were backstage for Celebration 2017, and your agent ran by me and says, "Do you want to take a picture with Paul Blake?" I'm like, "No offense." I'm like, "No, I'm busy." He's like, he's putting on the Greedo outfit. I jumped up. We're all wanting to go there, and they just put the belt on him. And you can look on my Facebook page. I have a picture of me and you. It was the first time he wore the Greedo outfit in 39 years, 40 years, whatever it was. But so you have worn Greedo. Have you worn it since?
Not since, and not ever again. That's the rule. Yeah.
I haven't put on the costume again either. And actually, Brian Muir is got a book that they've just done.
And he's here.
And Brian's here. If you go to his table, you'll see the book. And there's a picture of me and Brian in Essen, and me in the costume without the helmet on. Wow. All the, whatever it was, 40 years or however long afterwards, you know. I was quite surprised I still fit it.
Well, the managers usually are in the back telling me to stop the panel, and I always try to go longer, but you got to catch a dewback.
I do have to catch
So gentlemen, I want to thank both of you for coming, and of course the great Kate Blake for adding to the show.
Yeah.
And they're still making Star Wars movies. You can still get there. Thank you very much, guys. Paul will still be here.